Glad everyone's here. Gorgeous weather. You're lucky. We don't have the orange cloud that we had about a week ago. Pleasure to be in front of everybody. So we're going to talk about, actually it's going to be a continuation of Dror's talk. And I think I have to start by reminding everyone of the prior state, sort of the current state now becoming prior state, right? And I think everyone heard that quote in our video that we made 3 years ago where I talked about a 100-year-old phone call process. So just think about, isn't it ironic that we have all of this incredible technology and we can send money across the world, and in our hiring process we have paper resumes and phone calls and kludgy laws like the Fair Credit Reporting Act that are designed to, that were basically as a response to a lot of problems with privacy and permissioning and things around data, right? We have large companies that own data that's probably not theirs, sell data that's probably not theirs, and oh, by the way, that data is wrong, and the people that are providing the data on their resumes are lying 20% of the time. That's the current state. So at some point, I realized as the head of the number 4 background screening company in the world that the madness had to stop, right? But it's hard. It's hard to get the madness to stop. Why? Because once stuff gets rolling a certain way, and there's lots of complexity and lots of companies involved, it's hard to change. But at some point, I think, especially with the rise of the next generation of the internet, different things that have occurred in public key cryptography, obviously the crypto world, with all of its bad connotations. I think there's been a realization that finally the day has come that we can make what we're trying to do here a reality. So this whole concept of truly being able to realize self-sovereign credentials, right? The ability to think about what we're really talking about here. We're talking about issuers issuing credentials, so that solves the integrity problem. We're talking about public key cryptography, which provides a way to verify those credentials haven't been tampered with. We're talking about self-sovereign credentials, so the idea is that the applicant or whoever is the credential holder can hold those credentials, but they can't tamper with them without it being detected. And we're solving about the transport layer, about getting those credentials transported across to the people that need to use them for whatever purposes, usually for hiring, but all sorts of different purposes that we probably haven't even imagined yet. That's what we're talking about here. That's what we're doing, is we are finally solving this glue layer that historically has been done with basically a little more than paper. I mean, all of our current electronic current processes are basically paper analogs. They're really no better than just the straight digitization of a paper CV. That's what we've been doing. And so, in a lot of ways, this particular neck of the woods is behind other areas of digitization, and we're catching up. But this is going to allow us to do it. I think that looking at where we are now, just to velocity, when we were here at this meeting last year, if I remember right, we did not have a single real live credential at that point. I think we had test credentials that we were running through the network, but there was no real live credential. 300,000 now, on a pace to do 1 million, I think, isn't that right? 1 million, and then we're looking at 8 million next year. We've had, as Dror mentioned, we've had a lot of first movers. HCA is here today. They're going to follow me. When I was the CEO of CISIV, we were looking for one of our largest clients to really take the leap and do this, and HCA saw the benefits of it to their organization, and they're one of the first movers. Is wonderful first mover initiative there. And they're going to talk more about that. But that's just one of a number of first mover initiatives. Now it's our time to go beyond first mover. And so now I'm going to tie this back to the title. Velocity network is a utility layer. It is, in my view, an ideal mix from an organization standpoint of decentralization and centralization. Sort of the anarchist crypto stuff of the world, with cryptocurrency, is everyone talks about ultimate decentralization. It doesn't work. But I will point out that as a foundation, we have member companies, none of which have a controlling interest in this organization. We have a blockchain. It's a permissioned blockchain, but it has at least 16, maybe more at this point, node operators that are operating the blockchain and have to achieve consensus. So no one entity has control of this network. And by the way, just remember the blockchain itself doesn't actually have the credentials on it, right? You can think of it as a hashed index that you can use to verify that the credentials are right, but you can't actually get the credentials off the blockchain network. It's the people themselves, the credential holders, that have the credentials, which is the self-sovereign part. So I think looking at how far we've come, the node operators, the structure of the organization, the participating members, the acceleration in the number of credentials we're issuing, we're making it happen now. I will tell you that the other thing I think is going to happen is, because we're a first mover and we're actually doing it, and doing it in ever-increasing volume, I think that's going to add weight to the utility standards underneath this, right? And by the way, velocity, I would say, as a network, is not rigidly prescriptive about the standards that are on top of the network. In fact, we're being very, very flexible about that, right? There's going to be interoperability at some point. But I also think that, like other areas, I don't believe at the end of the day there are going to be that many that end up doing this. I think it's going to shake out. Maybe there's 2 or 3, but velocity as a first mover is the one that's ahead of everybody else. So I think that's really what's going to happen in the next year or so. Is there's going to be a shakeout of different entities that are trying to do this. I think there's going to be continued settling of the data standards, but at the end of the day, this new data layer that we've created, this utility layer, is going to be a standard across the world for this type of data interchange. Again, it's going to take a while to put all the pieces together, but that's where it's headed. And I think that, the vision for the future, there are all sorts of credentials that we haven't even started putting on the network yet that will come to pass, maybe even government credentials, right? I think everyone can imagine it goes far beyond simple employment verifications, education verification, education credentials, and the different things like that. We've talked about training credentials. We've talked about, I was having a conversation with someone, with folks in the lobby about insurance credentials. There's all manner of, as ACA is there's one aspect of what HCA is doing, but there's a lot more that can be done in healthcare, immunization records, all sorts of different things. And so I think it's almost hard to wrap your head around how many different places this could go in terms of the breadth of the capabilities that could be implemented. Some of that's going to be done by, or most of it's going to be done by you as members of the network on top of the network itself. But that's the power of the network. The network is not being dogmatic or prescriptive about its intended use. Now, there are controls. As you're going to find out shortly, we're implementing an accreditation process for notaries to make sure that there are standards around, especially if you're having a third party issue the records for what would be the normal issuer. So there are boundaries and rules that are being implemented by the network, but it's not rigid. And I think that supports a wide variety of business models that can be implemented by the member organizations, which at the end of the day, I believe, will generate a rich ecosystem around the data layer. So this is more than, at the end of the day, it's more than just a technical exercise. This is a real happening thing. The network is live, it's growing, in some ways organically, which is great. And I think I'm going to end by saying, you know, that's what makes this particular assembly so powerful, is it brings together people of many different disciplines and businesses to put their minds together and talk to each other and talk about ideas and opportunities. Because I think it's not just the network, it's the people network on top of this network, networking themselves and coming up with business opportunities and relationships to actually make all this work. So there's a enmeshing of business relationships that I think are just as critical as the underlying data layer. And that is, by the way, where we have a tremendous head start over everybody else. Because I think, you know, Dror will think he will agree, the big thing about this that was so different than every other technical exercise was that we started by bringing the right businesses together, right? Not that the technology is not important, it's very, very important. At the end of the day, if Andres hadn't worked his miracles getting this thing running, you know, we would still be talking about it. But there are lots of other comparative initiatives that if you looked at 3 or 4 years ago, they hung a shingle out there, but they didn't have the right organizations involved or the right people involved to actually drive it forward, and those things are gone. So I think we've made a bet on the right path forward with the right organization. And I'm personally looking very forward to not having to do phone calls to do verifications, all the crazy things that my friends there sitting in the audience at CISIV have to do every day. And I think we're all looking forward to a place where we don't have to look at somebody's credentials and wonder whether they've faked them. We're looking forward to not having to recheck, taking days-long processes to recheck these same credentials over and over again. It's going to be an exciting new world. Finally, in this particular area of the neck of the woods, we're going to have joined other initiatives in the internet that have moved things that take weeks to seconds, right? It's time we do that here too. So looking forward to talking to every single one of you over the next couple of days, and very proud to be the chairman of this great foundation, and looking forward to the future. Thanks.